And we're expanding beyond New England, right? Right now we have operations in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Maine and kind of all the New England stuff. And now we've been on the ground in North Carolina for over a year, underwriting sites, sending out LOIs, meeting with GCs, kind of building the infrastructure there to get projects off the ground, North Florida, Texas markets. We see growth in a lot of these areas. Obviously, it's challenging times right now from a macroeconomic perspective, but we very much view that, to be ready for the next boom or to be ready for the next upcycle. I remember driving down Revere Beach in 2009 with my dad. In 2009, nothing had been built on Revere Beach at all.
Right.
And you could have bought every single piece of land on Revere Beach combined. All of them you could have bought for 10 or 15 million bucks. Right? Today, they were all like $1 million each. People wanted.
Right. Yeah.
Today, those parcels individually sell for $20 to $30 million a piece. And everybody knows what's happened with Revere Beach. That has always been a very distinct marker in my history in business. And I promised myself I would never be in that position again, where I knew there was value there and did not have the liquidity to buy even one of those pieces of land.
Right.
Right. And now I think we're entering very similar times from a land perspective. I think land's going to start to get really clipped. It's the last piece of the puzzle. And there's going to be tremendous opportunity out there because of failed projects for people to position themselves very well for what I think is going to be an incredible bull run in 25, 26, 27, 28.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that like a little bit deeper with your comment on I'd love to just get your quick synopsis on the overall macroeconomic climate, what you just alluded to as far as, down cycle versus where you see things swinging back the other way. And obviously in conjunction with all of that, your strategic decision to start expanding your geographic horizon and how that decision correlated to our market, our local market sort of development status, if you will.
Yeah. Right. So I think from a macro perspective, obviously it's really challenging times, right? Interest rates have expanded 600 basis points. That's really challenging to get deals done, right? I mean, you take the direct impact from that on a development pro forma, never mind carry costs. Our interest reserve for our Haverhill project that we're doing went from $4 million to $8 million. I mean, that's significant, right? Imagine if your construction costs went up double, right? That's a significant driver. Now, then the carry reserve, the operating reserve had to double because now the interest while the building's vacant is double, right? So there's that impact. In other markets, what we've seen is an expansion in cap rates as well. So now we've seen the values drive down, right? That has not happened to the same extent in Boston. Cap rates have expanded a little bit.
Right.
So maybe 50 basis points, depending on where you are. We were selling some product for, in the high three cap range, and now that stuff's in the 4s. It's not 6s, right? And other parts of the country, it's 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
Boston's very resilient. Boston is significantly undersupplied. Boston has significantly, when I say Boston, I'm talking 495.
Yep.
Boston, significantly undersupplied, significant barriers to entry, significant zoning reform needed, and all of those things combine with the result that you can't build enough housing. You cannot build enough housing in Boston. There is inherent demand. I'll give a simple example. We did a project in Wilmington. You guys manage it. We pro forma'd these townhouses. We got these 2-bedroom townhouses over there.
Crazy numbers.
Crazy. They were pro forma'd. I remember the original number was
like high 3s, right?
No. The original was 2,800. And then construction costs went up, and we needed to fix the pro forma. So we said, we'll get 31, 32 for these. And the banks and the appraisers were busting our chops that we would never get 3,200 or 3,300 a month for these townhouses on Main Street in Wilmington, Massachusetts, and they're renting for 52.
Yeah, I was over $5,000.
Right,
crazy.
The level of undersupply and demand in these markets is astounding. That project in Wilmington, again, another example of barriers to entry. That project in Wilmington was the first new multifamily building larger than 2 units built in 10 years in that town. Right? So
2 units, that's insane, right? Like not even like a 10 unit here or there.
Duplex, that's the first. So that leads to Boston having a really nice forward-looking story. We are very, very, very bullish on Boston. Not Boston proper, the city. Boston proper, the city, has its own pack of issues right now from a regulatory
Yeah.
and landlord relations kind of perspective, that's very, very challenging and is going to be very challenged if stuff doesn't change. But outside of Boston zip codes, inside 495, incredibly bullish on almost all
Yeah.
those communities. I think when you start to tie that story into how we look at other markets and market expansion, we start to look, what we really started to do is say, okay, what can be another Boston for us? We're not a developer that's going to go into a market and build one building. We can't sustain that, right? I'm not going to put boots on the ground, build one building in Dallas, Texas, and have to fly back and forth to Dallas every other week, right? Like, that's just not going to work. So we said, okay, what's a market where we could see ourselves building 10 deals? Building 2 deals at a time, 3 deals at a time, owning 10 deals there, right? What's a market that has economic drivers like Boston? And the first market we looked at was Raleigh. Well, not the first one.
Yeah.
The first one we settled on was Raleigh, North Carolina. If you look at the research triangle, it looks and acts like Boston. Meds, eds, life science, and technology. Those are the drivers in Raleigh. What are the drivers in Boston? Eds, meds, life science, technology. Add in a little bit of defense contracting. They're nearly identical markets. Look at the people base in Boston. Significant inflows from the Northeast, right? North Carolina, I like to say, is still pine trees, not palm trees. Right? It acts, it's better climate, it's better winters, it's better living, it's better lifestyle, it's a better cost of living, and it still looks and feels a lot like the Northeast. So Raleigh kind of was the first one that we kind of said, hey, Raleigh's going to play, I think, over the next 10 years in the United States, an outside. It's going to punch well above its weight class in terms of its economic production. Yeah. That's clear. That's very clear to me. And then we started to look beyond that and say, okay, what are some other growth markets? We've always been big gateway city players in Massachusetts, right? We built 7, 8 buildings in Lynn. We're building buildings in, Beverly. We're building buildings in Haverhill. We've got projects we're looking at in Lowell, right? So we said, what are the national markets that fit that mold, right? Kind of growth expansion markets, right? Everybody wants to talk about Florida. Where do they go in Florida? They go to Orlando. They go to Tampa. They go to Miami. They go to Fort Lauderdale. They go to Palm Beach. They go to Naples. But what about Jacksonville? Jacksonville's the fastest growing city in Florida. Go to south of Jacksonville. Look at the stuff in St. Augustine, St. Johns County. We're really, really bought in on kind of that area of the state, the northeast corner, and what its growth potential looks like. Look at some markets in Alabama, Birmingham, Huntsville. Everybody liked to laugh about Trump's Space Force, but the reality is, what put Colorado on the map as a real estate market? The Air Force did.
Right.
And I think you're going to see significant inflows of money, defense contracting, major technology firms, space exploration firms, flowing into Alabama because that's where Space Force has been headquartered. So I think there's a lot of these factors that there's some markets out there that people don't traditionally think of that are going to prove to be growth markets over the next decade in the United States.